Speaking for leave, please welcome the Labour MP, Kate Hoey.
Thank you. Tony Benn called the EU a derogation of our historic democratic right to select and remove our governments. He was right then, he's right now. The Labour Party, as you know, was as a whole, when I joined it, was very sceptical towards the common market. And there are still some in Parliament today who were elected, including Jeremy Corbyn, on a manifesto of leaving the EU. I'm very proud to be following in the footsteps of great Labour figures whose democratic credentials can never be doubted. Hugh Gaitskell, Peter Shore, and people like Barbara Castle. The Labour movement's roots were to represent the interests of the workers against big business. The roots have shrunk. Then, if they have, and they are, then so has the true meaning of left-wing politics, and we need to refresh them. Preserving the right to elect our governments, who make the laws that we have to carry out, is the basic minimum of people's rights. It's the basis of all other rights, and without it, rights can easily be taken away. And I don't believe you can trust people in power if they cannot be removed by elections. Now, no one can deny that the EU's government, the Commission, is unelected and cannot be removed by any of us or elections. And that fact alone is reason to me enough to reject the EU, regardless of all the other considerations that you will hear tonight. If we were looking now into joining the EU as it is, if we were looking now to join it as it is, the vast majority of people would be absolutely horrified at its anti-democratic status. And I've been in the Labour Party for many years, and occasionally I've been known to disagree with my party's majority view. But I'm in the Labour Party because I care about our public services and the service that they provide to the most vulnerable. And the EU is going down a neoliberal path to open up those very services to global tax-dodging multinational corporations. Now, many people in my party think vaguely of the EU as some kind of social democracy. It isn't a socialist, it isn't democratic, it is exactly the opposite. It is corporatist and anti-democratic. And the EU's founding principles, the four principles of capitalism, the four principles, the four pillars of the EU, free movement of goods, services, labour and capital. And those are the principles of a free market. They are not the principles of a political system. And the EU's purpose is to rule in the interests of the smooth running of a corporatist economy without regard to the encumbrance of an electorate. Is this something that Labour voters or anyone else can support? José Barroso, President of the unelected Commission, made it very clear in 2014, the EU is an antidote to democratic government. You know, how can he actually even try to pretend that he trusts the sense or decisions of the people? Another reason many Labour voices support the EU is that they believe it somehow favours workers' interests. The so-called social chapter was offered to the unions in exchange for acceptance of the anti-democratic nature of the EU, and they fell for it. It offered regulations about working hours and holidays, which could easily have been achieved by democratic means and served most to create an acceptable image for the capitalist EU. This is perhaps the cleverest fraud of all. It does nothing of the kind. It seeks to make, out of the 450 million people, a vast sea of migrant labour, the biggest pool of migrant labour since the 1930s in America. Now migrant labourers are forced to work for a minimum wage and can be excluded from union rates by EU law, a good example being the Laval case in Sweden. The EU has even prosecuted unions for trying to get union rates for migrant workers. Why? Because they want to make cheap labour available right across Europe, despite the hardship and upheaval it creates. At least when we oppose, and I oppose, the policies of this Conservative government, we can actually look to voting them out and reverse their policies. We can't do that with an unelected EU Commission. And similarly on all the environmental issues, the EU, some people will say, is good for regulations of emissions, poisonous substances. Again, it's exactly the wrong impression. And this has been made very clear by the TTIP trade agreement negotiated in secret by the EU. Not only does it give the go-ahead to US corporations to sue governments for loss of profits, threaten the enforced privatisation of the NHS, and to impose GM foods despite British bans, and to make it impossible to regulate against harmful chemicals, it actually creates the legal conditions that undermine the very abilities of elected government to make laws in the interest of the people against the immense power of the multinationals. There could be no clearer indication of what the EU really is, an attempt to replace the democratic power of the people with a permanent administration in the interests of very big business. Everything else is a smokescreen. And I cannot understand how anyone on the left who opposes TTIP would want to remain in the EU. And that's very clear why Obama was threatening us. People who know how dangerous the EU talk of reforming it from within. They know that that can never be reformed. The best way to secure our freedom and democracy in Europe is for the United Kingdom to leave the EU. And finally, for people who keep saying, what does leave look like? Well, I'll tell you what it looks like. It looks like all the other 169 countries in the world, with most of them with true democratic accountability, free trade, border controls, and so on. So the question is, let us be clear, there is no certainty about remaining in the EU. The price of true freedom is uncertainty. The price of certainty is a form of servitude, and we need to set our country free from that future servitude.
Liz Hoey.
Let's
go to the audience.
Does a disservice to us.
Thank you, Chukwumuna. Henry Maddow.
Good evening. I have recently graduated and I'm now training to be a lawyer. I have £36,000 of student debt. Why should I vote to leave the European Union when to do so would surely increase economic uncertainty?
Kate Hoey.
Well, as I said, I don't actually think that leaving the EU is creating anything other than a certainty that we will be able to make our own decisions and do work in the way that we want to as an elected government and as an elected opposition. In terms of student fees, that is not directly affected by, I accept, by the EU.
But what he's asking is, he's got a lot of debt round his neck right now.
Oh, yeah.
He's training to be a lawyer, so actually he'll probably get rid of that debt quite quickly. But anyway, I have to pay the fees. What he wants to know is, given that he's got that debt round his neck, why would he vote for economic uncertainty? Because there has to be, surely, if we leave, a degree of uncertainty.
There's a degree of uncertainty in probably the initial phases, and there's no doubt about it. The CBI report came out and said that initially there would be some uncertainty and there would be some perhaps slowness, but ultimately we would be better off out. And I do think that, your individual case is upsetting for you, but I see absolutely no reason why well, of course it's upsetting for everybody who's got debt, and I'm one of those people who was educated because there was absolutely no fee to pay, and I voted against the increase of and putting any fees at all on student grants, because I think actually what we did as a Labour government was try to send far too many people to university and ignore all those people who would. Anyway, that's getting away from the point, Andrew.
It certainly is, so I'm going to stop you now.
But it's quite...
Liz Kendall, no, you got away from the point. You don't get a second chance.
The World Bank,
but he's leading your campaign.
He will no doubt have his opinions on that, but I think most people think that there will be a risk, and I just don't think it's worth it.
Nearly all those people, and some of them on this platform as well, said that we would be so much worse off if we didn't join the euro, including Nick.
Exactly.
Well, I've never said that in my life, so I'm not going to take responsibility.
You've never been in favour of the euro, Liz Kendall?
No.
Nick Clegg, you wrote in Prospect magazine in 2002 that if we remain outside the euro, we will simply continue to subside into a position of relative poverty and inefficiency compared to our more prosperous European neighbours. Would you like to delete that now?
Yes. Yes, I would. Can I just, and I'm going to talk to Henry.
The EU, could it lead to the breakdown of the United Kingdom?
Will it lead to the break-up, I think, of the United Kingdom?
That's what I meant, yeah, break up.
Don't worry.
Thanks for that, cheers.
my humble job to
Staying in
make
will
sure
lead to the
you
breakdown of-
stay what you want. Wait till I get to you. Just relax. Kate Hoey, will it not lead to the breakup of the United Kingdom?
No, if we're talking about the Scottish dimension, the Scottish Nationalist Party want to have a referendum at the slightest opportunity. So I don't think whether we leave or stay will have anything to do with that. And I also think it's important to point out, because there is this kind of myth around that the whole of the Scottish National Party, the whole of Scotland is somehow desperate to stay in the EU. I think we'll see on June the 23rd just how wrong that is, because the Scottish groups are just as split as many of the rest of the United Kingdom. I really genuinely don't think it will make a difference. And I also think the idea that somehow they would vote to leave and then want to have to rejoin if they were independent and to take the euro, which they'd have to do under the EU rules. So I don't think that's true. And as far as Ireland, Northern Ireland's concerned, I'm from Northern Ireland, and very, very strongly people in Northern Ireland still, despite everything that's happened, by a huge majority, want to stay part of the United Kingdom. They want to trade with the Republic of Ireland. They want to be friends. It won't make the slightest bit of difference, and it's another bit of a sort of kind of, let's raise something else to scare people. Don't be fooled.
Chukwumuna,
Could I
is
just
the
ask-
Union safe, even if we vote to leave the European Union?
I think if we vote to leave the European Union, I think Scottish independence will very much be on the cards. But can I just ask Kate, because she said something very interesting, though, about Scotland.
So is it safe?
Can
The
you-
EU, is it safe? Are you answering the question? Is it safe?
I did. I just said that. I think that the UK could split up if we leave the European Union. But the question I was just going to
Sorry,
ask
so you don't think it's safe?
Yeah, he thinks it'll break up.
Ah.
Yes, I answered the
So
question.
what's the question?
Well, my question was, Kate said something quite interesting, if I heard her correctly, which is that actually there is a mix of views, and amongst Scottish MPs and others, there are different views on the European Union and whether we should stay in or we should come out. Kate, can you name a SNP MP who wants us to leave the European Union?
Well, I have been told. Well, Jim Sillars is leading a very
He's not an
substantial. No, he's not an
MP.
MP in Parliament. Would he stop worrying?
Well, he asked
Look,
about
if
an MP, so don't name someone who's not an MP.
Well, Jim Sillars is leading an anti-EU group in the Scottish Nationalist Party. This obsession with MPs. Thank goodness there's only, 658 of us with a vote. There are millions of people with a vote. And the idea that just because MPs in a party are all united, that somehow
the SNP,
this referendum, Chuka, will be about people out there actually deciding that the politicians aren't always right.
But,
Well, that's true. I wouldn't disagree with that.
Just for the record, Kate Hoey, did I understand you to say that you think that Scotland is going to vote to leave?
No. What I said was that the way the media, blame the media, well, the way the political parties, the little elite of all the established parties that are all saying we've got to remain, they're implying that somehow Scotland is so different from the rest of the United Kingdom in terms of its
But you don't think
attitude.
it'll vote to leave?
I would hope that, I'd hope that the majority
I know
of
what
the
you
whole
hope.
of the
What I'm
United
asking is
Kingdom
what
will
you
vote
think.
to leave, but I don't think the difference in majority, whatever it is, will be that different in Scotland from England or Northern Ireland or Wales.
That's for the record. We'll see on the night. Next question from Robert Wheel. Robert.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.